To end off this amazing triple header, we make our way to Brazil. The Interlagos track is a staple for Formula One and always brings a very interesting race, and the car setups are very important for a track like this that is counterclockwise and requires teams to make a compromise either on the top speed or going for more cornering and better tire wear throughout the race. This will be a sprint weekend. There won't be a lot of upgrades, but we do have some news on the 2026 regulations, also as well as a couple of big team upgrades that could be coming to this GP or the future. Right before getting into it, I wanted to thank you guys for support on the channel. To all you guys that watch the channel, it means the world to me, and thank you for sticking around and really giving me a chance. It means a lot. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. It would do a lot for me and it helps out the channel, so thank you for that. But let's get started first with the 2026 regulations and what they could look like coming into that season. A lot has been spoken about on these 2026 cars, and the regulations themselves have caused a big controversy between drivers, teams, and the FIA themselves. But in a recent article, the FIA has came out and said that the 2026 concept and the actual car itself, when it is being developed and upgraded, will be as fast, if not faster, than the first regulation of the 2022 cars, which is a big step in the right direction. And we actually have now that issue 9 of the car that is illustrated here by somebody on Twitter, QVest Designs. I mean, he makes some very beautiful specs of this car, and I'm going to be using his pictures just to show you what they've done. As you can see, they've added now another end plate on to the issue 9 car, which could give it a slight bit more of outwash now, not having that little winged gap that it has on the issue 8. But a slight variation still should be mainly in wash on the front wing part. Now the rear wing itself is unchanged, but as you can see, the exhaust itself is longer than it was in issue 8, and this will slightly affect the cars when it comes to aerodynamics, more so for the engine power. But the biggest one by far is the floor design. As you can see, there's now this connector from the chassis part of the car, connecting that board on the outer part of the floor. What's being called now the control board has this connector that is to stabilize the flow, and as you can see, there are slight barge board aero pieces on the beginning part of the floor. There is going to be no underfloor so far from this car. That will be the extent of what can be used in the front part of the car. That can be modified to however the teams want to make this aerodynamic piece work. And it should be very interesting as to how teams are going to make this section really regulate the flow from the front of that floor to the back of it, because now it's going to be very similar to that of the 2021 cars and the issue before that. So that should be nice to see a difference in aero again. This last picture just illustrates those pieces that I was talking about, full on to that issue 9 car. Thank you, QVest Designs, for these beautiful shots of this car. It genuinely looks amazing, and props to him, man. It looks great. But now we can get into what teams are going to be bringing to Brazil. As I said, the upgrades will be low. There is talks about them, and I can give you some information, which is good. Aston Martin themselves, when it comes to upgrades, have halted in the season. Nothing else will be coming to the car. What they brought in Texas is supposed to be some parts from the 2025 car to just test them and regulate them. Obviously, they've had a very bad run of GPs as of lately. The car did not look good in Texas. The car did not look good in Mexico. There was some signs of potential when Alonso was driving this Q2 lap, but Yuki crashed. We never ended up actually getting a good variable of where this car is. He said Q3 was very possible. He was quite on for a good lap, was up 2.5 tenths, and then in the race he ends up getting a DNF. Lance also struggled with cooling in the front part of the brakes as well. And it's just a continuous problem when it comes to cooling on this car. They can never push the car very fast. The aerodynamic platform is unstable. I mean, the Aston Martin car is just messy all over the place. They are bringing old specs and new specs, trying to get a better gist of what's good on the car. For Mexico, they actually ran the front wing from Texas. Then they ran the side pods that were brought in Japan. And the floor itself looked like it was the Imola floor. So it's just a mess over there at Aston. I'm not very certain as to what's going to come here. But like last year, Mexico was horrible. Brazil was in an amazing race. So it's possible they could be good here. But now let's talk about the top 3 big teams. And I'm excluding Mercedes from this because they're done with upgrades. But Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren all have parts that have potential of coming. We know one team that's coming. I'll talk about them at the end of the video, but first I want to talk about Red Bull. Now, Red Bull has parts, at least confirmed by sources, that there's possible parts that could be coming to Las Vegas. These will not be game-changing parts, but to just work on the aero efficiency as to what was brought in Texas and Baku. But it seems like this car is far out of reach when it comes to the Ferrari and the McLaren. At some points, Verstappen was running slower than the Haas on the hard tires. They're pretty decent on the medium, but as soon as that hard tire gets put onto the car, whether that's them not being able to regulate good temperature in the beginning, so that causes a lot of sliding for Max and makes him lose tire grip very fast, also resulting in him not being able to push towards the end of the race. It's a mix of a lot of problems. That RB20 car is kind of stuck. They seem to be the third best car. Maybe Mercedes on their day could possibly catch them. It's not been a good look for them, and with very little parts left in this 2024 season, we can only expect minor parts that could be brought to Las Vegas. There is no official confirmation, but sources like Dr. Obbs, who's on Twitter, he's pretty close with that Red Bull team. He has some sources, says that there are parts still waiting to be brought to the car, and Las Vegas is a possible destination. We're also going to be seeing that high engine cover in Brazil, as top speed is very important, and they don't need the high downforce spec like they used in Mexico and Texas, so we'll see now with the new floor if that actually works correctly. As for Ferrari, there were supposed to be upgrades at Texas. Then we ended up actually finding out that the front wing was modified for Texas, but it wasn't an actual external part that they had to now say to the FIA was changed. So that front wing is changed. It's definitely giving them a lot of downforce. The best car in Mexico, the best car in Coda, possibly the best car now in Brazil. It's going to be a medium to low downforce track. They've usually been good here. There's not too many traction corners where that Ferrari can use its best source of pace, but the car in general has been good everywhere. If you look at sectors 1, 2, and 3 in Mexico, they've been strong. Same with Coda. The car is in a very big window of very good performance. I do expect the Ferrari to be very good here. Still minor parts waiting. Vasseur has said only if they need to, they'll bring them because they are in a close constructors battle. The possibility could be for Vegas or Qatar. Qatar has been the rumored destination. As for Brazil, we're just going to see a lower downforce spec of the Ferrari car. But the last team that has confirmed upgrades coming to Brazil is McLaren, and this has been said by Andrea Stella that this GP should bring some parts to the McLaren. We do also know that Oscar is now going to get the floor that Lando ended up having in Mexico. It will now be brought to the car in Brazil, and yet again, their upgrades have worked at making the car super consistent. Lando was the fastest car at the very end on those hard tires. Even going through traffic, he was pretty much going to catch Carlos if you give it another 3 or 4 laps. That was Lando's race to lose. But yet again, like every team, these parts will probably be minor, not too many changes that are very visible to us, just to improve the efficiency of the car. It is the best car. We're only going to see big actual visual changes during the winter. Brazil will still bring some of those championship defining upgrades. Whether they're minor or not, they work on the McLaren and they need just a little bit of pace to catch Ferrari. It's very close between those two, both in the constructors and for Lando to potentially have a fight with Verstappen for the Drivers' Championship. It's going to take a lot, but with the sprint weekend, if they can capitalize fully and Red Bull doesn't get it right, this could be Lando's opportunity. So we'll have to see what happens for the rest of 2024. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you guys think? Do you think these upgrades are actually going to make a change for McLaren? And what is your expectation for the rest of the season? Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.